What's up, guys, and welcome to Q&A, the show where I take your questions from YouTube and answer them here in video format. And again, if you want to make sure your question gets on this show, please make sure you're subscribed and notified so you can be there when I post the question prompt on the community tab. So to make sure you don't miss that, make sure you're subscribed, make sure you're notified so you don't miss that prompt and so you don't miss any uploads when they come up. Without further ado, we're going to jump into your questions. And the first one is from Hunter Tosh, who says, the media says that the Steelers are the Browns' first real test. They said that about the Cowboys, the Colts. How long will they not believe? They also said that about the Bengals in week 2. Look, the Browns could win the Lombardi Trophy this year, and they would say, well, you know, it was pandemic and all this stuff, and, you know, let's see them do it next year. They ain't going to give us credit. We're not going to get the credit from them. They don't gain anything from giving us the credit. So, you know, whatever. They're not going to give us credit. That's fine. You know, so they don't want to give us the credit, whatever. You know what I mean? Eventually, they'll have to if the Browns are good enough. So I'm not worried about it. I just think it's kind of funny at this point. The next question comes from Deutschland, who says, do you think this win establishes us as a legit team, like playoff contender? I think the Browns were a playoff contender couple weeks ago, to be honest. But yeah, this win establishes the Browns as a team to talk about as somebody who could potentially come out of the AFC. So that is the level of team that the Browns are at right now. Now, they have to win and maintain that status. But right now, when you talk about teams that can come out the AFC, the Browns have to be in that conversation because they deserve to be in that conversation. They beat a team in Indy that's either going to win their division or make the playoffs. They're probably going to win their division, seeing where the rest of the AFC South is. So this is a team that is going to win their division and be in the playoffs. Browns beat them and beat them while not playing at their best. So yeah, the Browns at 4-1, they have to be considered one of those teams. Next question comes from Solomon Robinson, who says, Quincy, how do you feel about slow Ronnie Harrison? He had some great pursuit tackles and looked like nobody could catch him on that return, LOL. And also, it would have been a blowout if things didn't happen after that pick 6. Yeah, he looked really fast there. Yeah, you know, I mean, like, he did look fast. Now, granted, he was running away from Phillip Rivers, which, you know, everybody looks fast running away from Phillip Rivers at this age. But yeah, I give credit where credit's due. He had a good game, made some great tackles. I would love to see more of Ronnie Harrison. I don't think you can necessarily put Ronnie Harrison and Carl Joseph on the field at the same time. They're just both too slow. But, you know, Sadejo, Ronnie Harrison, you can live with that. This next question also comes from Deutschland, who says, I didn't like the play calling. We kept running it up the middle when it clearly wasn't working. What did you think? I mean, like, there's a reason the Browns should run up the middle early in games and continue to do it, even if they're not getting a ton of yards, just because it sets up the defense to be kind of softened in the fourth quarter. And you saw some of that happen in some of these drives in the fourth quarter where they were softened. It's just they couldn't complete these drives like they normally would be able to. And part of that is because DeForest Buckner was there. Like, that's the best interior defensive lineman in football. Other parts of it were the Browns just weren't executing at the same level. Dearness Johnson, up until that run he had at the end of the game, just wasn't having a great game. So me personally, I don't mind the runs up the middle. I think those are going to be your bread and butter in the third and fourth quarter, and you need to soften them up in the first and second to make sure that can happen. But I can understand where people be frustrated. Next question comes from Carlos Rodriguez, who says, hey, Quincy, I just wanted to get your take on what happens to the Browns after the half, or what happened to the Browns after the half. Every game, it seems that the first half Browns look 10 times better than the second half Browns. This is a great observation. The Browns have this weird habit of jumping out on teams or getting a lead into halftime, and then in the third quarter, they just stink. Like, they're just one of the worst third quarter teams. It reminds me of like when LeBron was with the Cavs, oddly enough. He had a stretch with the Cavs. I don't know if it was during his first run or second run, where like the Cavs are just the worst third quarter team in the NFL, in the NBA. I believe it was in 2016 or 2017 where they just were awful in third quarters like all season. And, you know, some teams are just like that, right? I don't get it. I hope they fix this going down the line because they seem to have solid fourth quarters. It just seems like first, second, they come out great. Third, and in the fourth quarter, they spend kind of like fixing the mistakes that they did in the third quarter. The next question comes from Top Plays, who says, how do you feel about the great offensive performance against the Colts defense while also lacking in the run game and Baker throwing 2 interceptions? It was a mixed bag. The Browns run game, didn't look great today. Didn't have Wyatt Teller, and you were going up against the best interior defensive line in the NFL. So that was a big blow and a specific blow. Also, so that's the lacking of the running game. That's explainable. And the 2 interception things from Baker Mayfield is kind of understandable if you didn't see the first half. Because if you would have told me coming into this game that Baker was going to throw the ball 37 times, I would have guessed he would have threw 2 interceptions. Like, that would have happened against this secondary. I mean, they have given up so little yards this season. They have 7 interceptions to 5 touchdowns this season. Like, they've been playing well, the Colts secondary. So that doesn't surprise me on the surface. It's just that Baker was so good in that first half that it's like, what happened in the second half? I don't know. Was it an adjustment? Something happened. So, yeah, that's a little bit concerning. So how do I feel about the offense? I feel like you showed that you were versatile enough that if you need Baker Mayfield to come out here and give you some quarters of good football, he can do that. He can put the team on his back a little bit, or at least he can get the ball to the receivers who could put the team on the back. Either way, the Browns don't just have to run to win, and they don't have to run exceptionally well to beat their opponent. They can do it different ways. So on that sense, it's more encouraging. And I am more encouraged about Baker Mayfield's ability to win a game like that going down the line. Because I just don't think he's going to play a secondary that's going to be playing as well as Indy was coming into this game. Maybe Baltimore later on in the season, maybe Pittsburgh later on in the season, but I think Indy was playing as well as the secondary can, and this is a game where Baker Mayfield had to do more through the air to win the game, and he did do more to win the game. Now, he could have not thrown those 2 interceptions, and that would have been even better, but he did do more to help you win that game. The next question comes from Raymond, who says, what changed in the second half of the game that made the offense struggle a little? I think the defense did a better job, and I'm talking about the Colts. The Colts defense did a better job with matching up DeForest Buckner on Chris Hubbard. When Wyatt Teller first went out, they still had DeForest where he would normally be lined up, and then when in the second half, I noticed that he was matched up more on Chris Hubbard. He was able to blow up more, and that was able to kind of get the Browns behind the sticks. And again, like any team, if you get them behind the sticks, they're going to struggle. I think that was key. I think the secondary kind of came alive for the Colts and played more to the level that they have been playing the last few weeks and were able to capitalize and get some interceptions. And I think you had some drives where your star players, while they did do Baker some tremendous favors in the first half, just didn't do Baker any solids in the second half. Jarvis had those 2 massive drops. I think if he makes both of those catches, which he should, then that changes the outlook of those drives. I think you probably score the ball a couple more times, and then we're looking at this game completely differently. But he did not. And those are the things that stall out drives. Those are the things that make offenses go cold. And that's just how football goes sometimes. Next question comes from the Pun Police, who says, do you think that the Steelers defense will force more pressure on Baker Mayfield? And if so, do you think he'll have more interceptions than against the Colts? I find it hard to believe because I like the Browns offensive line matchup against the Steelers, especially if Wyatt Teller's not going to be in there, more than I did against the Colts. And again, that's no disrespect to the Steelers. I just think the Colts matched up better against the Browns from a defensive line standpoint and a personnel standpoint. So if they were not able to force a ton of pressure, I don't know if Pittsburgh's going to be able to force a ton of pressure. Now, they're going to be able to force pressure, but I don't know if they're going to be able to do it a ton. I'm not so worried about that, but it is something to worry about because they do have 2 tremendous edges and 1 tremendous defensive player in TJ Watt. Next question comes from 21 Stack 21, who says, hey, Quincy, how big was this game for Baker Mayfield and his development? Also, do you think Miles can keep up the productivity through the rest of the season? answer the first part of that question, this was a big game for Baker Mayfield's development. It would have been a bigger game without the interceptions, but I think he's getting more comfortable. And you can see this in the pocket, right? He panicked much less in the pocket, you know, where he would usually break and run right and run left and kind of like scatter out the pocket. This week, you saw him step up a little bit. You saw him kind of sidestep some pressure. You saw much better things. Now, he did get injured. I wonder if that's going to affect his confidence and ability to just stand in there in the upcoming games. I hope it does not, because I think that was a positive step, and that was why he was able to have a lot of success in the first half, but we'll see. So that's where I look at it as a big step in Baker Mayfield's development. I think he should get some confidence. If he can have a good first half like he did against the best secondary in football at this moment, then he should have some confidence that he can be able to be a game changer in some of these games. And the next one about Myles Garrett's productivity, if he does keep it up, like this is like a defensive player of the year, like almost like legendary run. I don't expect him to do something like that, but you know, right now he's on pace for 22 sacks. Last year he was on pace for about 16 sacks. So I'll say this. I think Myles Garrett is on pace for somewhere between 16 and 22 sacks. I think that's where he's going to end up this year, and that's tremendous. This question comes from Ferbs, who says, yo, Quincy, want to ask what changed in the Browns' kick return coverage from last year? 2019 was elite, 2020 not so much. Are the kicks in the goal line being designed to intend the runner short of the 25, or is Parkey simply unable to consistently clear the zone? Now, Parkey does kick low into the edge. I don't know if he's being coached to do that. It's kind of weird. I wish he didn't do that, but that's been its own problem. I think the issue is just depth. A lot of guys are injured. You got a lot of new guys on special teams. The kick return for a touchdown happened because Ronnie Harrison ran back that pick for a touchdown, had to get oxygen on the sideline, could not be in for the next play, which was the kick return. MJ Stewart, who's his backup, missed the tackle, boom, touchdown. So that's just another example of depth being an issue on special teams and depth being an issue with this team overall and league-wide. So I think that has more to do with it. Also, you know, the protocols for the offseason were really tough on special teams. So I think it's hard for somebody to have a lack of depth and still have a good special teams unit given the lack of preparation special teams were able to get. Usually you at least have the preseason game for the special teams to be able to get used to what they have to do. This year, they just don't have that. They didn't have anything close to full goal live kick return situation. So now you're seeing the cost of that. But that's it for this week's questions. Thank you guys for asking them. Have a great day. Have a good night.